Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Comic Book Nostalgia. I'm CB Nostalgia, and I thought we could take a couple minutes to talk about Daredevil and the Netflix shows. Well, as many of you know, the Marvel Netflix shows have moved over to Disney+. This means Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Punisher, and The Defenders are all now available on the streaming service. But now it seems to have generated even more questions about the canonical status of those characters inside of the MCU. I thought we could take a couple minutes to talk about all those characters, where they fit into the MCU, and what's really going on, and more importantly, why. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about The Defenders and Kevin Feige. Now, before we dive into this though, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. Also, the big giveaway. We're going to give away this Oculus Quest 2 at 50,000 subscribers. All you need to do to get in on our giveaway is be a subscriber and leave us a comment. Also, while you're at it, check out that free week of Skillshare down below. It's an incredible way for you to develop your superhero skills for that never-ending war on crime, all while not diving too deep into your pockets. Plus, it really does help the channel, so we really appreciate it. Well, now that all the Netflix shows are back home on Disney+, many Marvel fans are wondering where Daredevil and the rest of those characters fit into the MCU. There's been some long-running confusion, and this status goes all the way back to the initial release of the shows. Let's break it all down from the beginning. As many of you know, in 2008, Iron Man technically kicked off the MCU, which led us to The Avengers, one of the biggest movies ever. The Netflix shows used the Avengers as a springboard and launched the first Daredevil series on April 10th, 2015. Now, this was initially marketed as clearly part of the MCU, and since then has created a ton of confusion and, more importantly, contradiction. Now, many of these shows were really great, and most of them got multiple seasons, with Daredevil leading the pack, followed by Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, and The Punisher, creating a rather large and dedicated fan base. Now, over and over again, we got references to The Incident, which was the Chitauri invasion from the first Avengers movie, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes. The reality of all of this is there was a distinct separation between Marvel TV and Marvel Studios. Marvel Studios was headed and always has been headed by Kevin Feige, and in those days, Marvel TV was headed up by Jeff Loeb, with both of them reporting up to Ike Perlmutter. Now, by the time Civil War came around, there was a showdown behind the scenes, and the executives at Disney pretty much pushed Ike Perlmutter aside and let Kevin Feige run Marvel Studios, reporting directly to them. About a year ago, the Marvel Television division was absorbed by Marvel Studios, and this led Kevin Feige to being the king of all things Marvel. Now, eventually, we had a return of these Netflix characters, and they all returned over a bit of time. The terms of this agreement seemed to be that they would return to Marvel Studios 2 years after the series was canceled, and recently the series themselves moved over to Disney+. We finally got to meet some of these characters in the last year within the confines of the MCU. Spider-Man No Way Home and Hawkeye both saw the returns of Daredevil, Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock, and Wilson Fisk returned in the Hawkeye series played by Vincent D'Onofrio. But there was some noticeable differences. This is where the confusion really takes off, and the contradictory statements, even by some of the actors, seem to drive fans in different directions. But let's be very real. There is one real source for Marvel information, and that's Kevin Feige. There is a simple reality to all of this that was explained in the past year within the confines of the MCU. Yes, these are effectively the same characters, but they're simply variants. The versions of Daredevil or Wilson Fisk or any other character that existed in the Netflix shows may also be in the MCU, but with slight variation. This is why they're called variants. The simple reality is, Kevin Feige will likely cherry-pick most of these series, pick the pieces that fit well into the MCU, and then discard the rest. For example, I find it unlikely Kevin will basically write off The Hand and The Chase completely for the future of various stories within the Marvel Universe. But the relationship between, say, Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock might be well established and long-running, allowing for some stories to just pick up and run however they see fit. This makes the series technically not canon, but rather useful watching to understand what's actually going on in the MCU, how these characters fit together, and more importantly, might find clues to tease aspects of these shows that might show up within the confines of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin Feige is going to be very specific about all this, and he won't allow those shows to sidetrack any storylines that could contradict official Marvel canon. A great example of that would be the Dragon Bones under New York City. Now obviously once we get more information on these Netflix shows and maybe some reboots, there's tons of rumors about Daredevil getting a reboot, we're going to bring it to you right away. But I gotta know what you guys think. Do you feel like the Marvel Netflix shows are canon to the MCU? Or do you think Kevin Feige as a producer will cherry pick what works and cast aside what doesn't? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you press the like, click subscribe, and if you don't ring that bell, you're not going to get any updates. Peace.